Okay, Acts chapter 3. We did make an outline for the chapter. Now, I made it all about the lame man. The lame man really ends about verse 10. But the tragedy of the lame man, you know, those that are born like that is a tragedy. But God does have a purpose. Why was the blind man born blind in John 9? John chapter 9. They said, is it this man's sin or is his parents' sin? But what's the problem here?
So God be glorified.
That God would get the glory. Yeah. So we say the tragedy of the lame man in his condition. Then he is healed. The healing of the lame man that took place, the new life of the lame man. You know, he was leaping, etc. The witness, now here's where we depart from actually the lame man, but the witness of the lame man. It's the witness because of the lame man. They witnessed. And then they gave an invitation because of the lame man, really because of him. The condition, the conversion, the character, the credit, and come to Christ. All right, and we'll get back to this outline here. All right, in verse 1, quickly here, it says they went up together, so it preaches unity. There must be unity within the church. He says, Peter says, look, we're doing a real quick review of last week. He said, look on us in verse 4. In Acts chapter 1, when the 120 are gathered, they are there. It says in two places in there, one accord. One accord. You know, it's like a canoe. Everybody needs to be rowing the canoe the same direction. And if your oars are going backwards like this, in which direction are you going? No, you are going somewhere.
Circles.
You're going in circles, right? So if you're going this way and you want to turn the boat around, you just reverse your oars. You go like this and the boat turns around, right? That's what repentance is, you know. Okay, it was the 9th hour in verse 1, which is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was the time of prayer. So we said in Daniel that he prayed 3 times a day. So the assumption, even though you can't prove it, would be 9 a.m., 12 o'clock, noon, and 3 p.m. Again, they went up together. Fellowship, unity in the church. People need to belong to a church. We said belonging to a church, even though we don't have roles where you sign up, you know, where you actually, or we sign you up and such like that. But if you don't really go or belong to a church and you're a guy that laid our concrete, the foundation at the house, he's a Christian, and he was talking about, I said, they used to come to our church, and he said, he called him a freelancer or a free spirit. I think he called him a free spirit. So what did that mean?
He didn't stay in one place too long.
He just floats everywhere. Right. He called him a free spirit.
Free agent.
Free agent. He floats all over. And we gave all these lights. It's like being a student without a school, doesn't go to school, or a soldier that isn't in the army. Trumpet player, not in the orchestra, and so on. Baseball player without a team, and so on. All right, up. It says they went up in, where does it say the word up? Did I see? Yeah. Up together. All right, so the temple is higher than the rest of the city. It's in verse 1. It's up. And so we said, in the old days, how would you find the church in a town? 150 years ago.
On the hill.
On the hill, and what else would you look for? The steeple. Whatever is the highest point, you could always point, that would be the center of activity back then. And it's on Mount what? Where's the temple? Mount Moriah, right. Again, together, we gave all these illustrations. Paul and Barnabas, they were together. Barnabas and John were together. Paul and Silas together. They're called fellow helpers. We looked up these. We didn't go to look up these verses, but they're included in the notes. Fellow helpers, fellow laborers, fellow servants, fellow workers, fellow soldiers. Paul would, even though he's a leader, Peter's a leader, Acts 1 through Acts 12 is all about Peter. From Acts 13 on, it's all about Paul. You have two main characters. But it was never all about Peter or all about Paul. It was, my dad always taught me, if you introduce employees, you say, this is so-and-so. We work together. You always have to make people feel part of the group. You know, that you don't work for me, we work together. That's really important for camaraderie, edification, that sort of thing. And that's really important. And then we concluded last week with the first point, the tragedy of the lame man, and finding this as part of salvation. It is a healing. He does get healed, but you can make salvation out of this. He's lame from birth. All right, so we're sinners by nature from birth. And we supported it with verses. Sinners by nature from birth because of Adam's sin. He is totally helpless, unable to save himself. Meaning, for by grace are you saved through faith, right? He was desperate. When a person is going to be saved, they have to get to the point where they are desperate, knowing that, it's like a drowning man. I need help and I need it now. Desperate. Without Christ, we are hopelessly lost, and we gave a verse for that. And he did find temporary satisfaction. When I don't know where they hang out in Cleveland, but if you go into Akron, go down to Akron and you exit East Market Street. I don't know what the name of the exit is there. East Market.
Market Street's Route 18.
Yeah, that's 18. If you go across the bridge, it's the first exit. What's that first exit called? It doesn't say.
Route 59.
It says Route 59. It does say 59, but there's another name there too.
It's like 59 and 18 is it, I think.
Yeah, you have to go through the first exit. You exited, and you go through the first intersection to the next intersection to hit 18. But if you turn right at that first one, it merges into 18. But anyway, who's always sitting there at that intersection, and then when you take 18 back to hit 8 going north, who's at that intersection? Pardon?
The Popo, the police.
Oh, the Popo? The police are not there.
Panhandlers.
The hobo, yeah, the panhandlers are there. They got their sign, and they're always there. So now they say that some of these guys are really making a killing. I don't know I don't know if I want to test that out and find out if that's true. I mean, anybody here want to test that out? I don't think you want to test that out. Some of them probably are, and others are not. But if you got a few alms or a few shekels, you would get a temporary relief. Give me a good verse. It's in Ezekiel to support that. Healeth the daughter.
Slightly.
Yeah, that's the word. Healeth the daughter of my people slightly. It does appear twice. Ezekiel 6, or is that Jeremiah 6? And healeth the daughter of Israel slightly. So there's a temporary relief. So he gets a few alms. He might monthly be able to take a bath someplace at a bathhouse, saves enough, and so on. But it's not lasting. It's always right back in the same misery. All right. So in the verse we support that with is like the prodigal. The prodigal could not. He could eat the husks, but it wasn't going to last. And that only Christ can totally bring complete eternal satisfaction. All right? We're not there yet. But technically, we are already seated in heavenly places. All right, now, Father, bless our lesson this morning, and that you would nourish the saints today, Father. In Christ's name, amen. Verse 1, they went up together into the temple. They're still attending the temple. So if you had gotten saved, it meant, as a general rule, sometimes you don't necessarily have to attend a fundamental independent Baptist church to get saved. Some people get saved while they're still at the Catholic Church. So wherever you get saved, we got saved. We were in the Mennonite Church, and there were people that came up to me. They didn't know what happened. The one woman, she didn't like me. She said, I didn't like you. You're so happy. And what happened? Yeah, you're so happy. It depressed her. And they get saved if you got saved in this culture, where would you still be going? Generally, well, you had just gotten saved. Go ahead, say it. You'd be still at the Catholic Church. Then what would that priest eventually do with you? They kick you out. You have to kick them out. Because the priest can't control this. Right? Where do they normally put those people if they want to hang on to them? In the church. Where do they normally put them? They put them in the basement. And what are they normally playing then? There's no piano down there. Or organ. What are they playing?
Oh, they're playing the folk service.
They're playing a folk service. They're playing their guitar, singing, not singing Kumbaya, but they're different, right? They're different. And so usually they have one of the priests go hippie and then try to control it, and they go down there. It gets out of control. They finally have to kick them out. Kick them out. And the old timers, they even get out and go to a church that's doing a Latin Mass. What are those Latin Mass? Are those at the Byzantine church? Byzantines? Pardon? Byzantine, they're doing the Latin Mass. Is there something on the west side doing the Latin Mass?
Right in North Royalton and Parma, right in the southern end of Parma, on Sprague Road, there's a little Catholic church that does a traditional Mass.
Okay, they're doing the old traditional.
Yeah.
Pre-1962 or whatever.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
St. Basil's? All right. Well, they kick them out. So they're still in the temple. They have no meeting place, even though they went house to house, or they were in the temple in verse 46 of chapter 2. But they went coming together. Does it say that they went around daily, one according to the temple? Oh, they did go breaking bread house to house. But they were still in one accord in the temple. So they probably had their own little group in the temple. And they're probably talking to their friends. They still had friends. What's the easiest way to get rid of your friends when you after you get saved? Tell them about Jesus. Just tell them about Jesus. Right? So they're in the temple talking about Jesus, telling their friends, hey, this new thing happened. Now they probably won some of them over. And the others, what did the others do? Well, who did they make a full report to? To the high priest. They went and had an audience with the high priest. They told the head priest. In Cleveland, it'll be the bishop. They have to do some telling. Like, this is what's going on. But they were still attending the temple. They were in the verse 2 in the gate called Beautiful. It is not one of the gates that are found. If you're going to find the gates, where do you go to find the gates? In the Bible. You go to Nehemiah, where they repaired the gates. Repairing the wall. And they would skip the gates. But they set it up, the pillars or whatever holds the gate up was done, and the gates were not done, but they repaired the wall up to a gate, and then whoever joined hard fast to the wall, that family was responsible for that wall. How long did it take for them to fix the wall? Anybody recall? I think it's 52 days. 52 days and who did not participate on one section of the wall? The noble, yeah, they didn't want to get their hands dirty. And they did not participate. But the word beautiful gate, you're not going to find that. Now, if you are going to find it, you're going to have to go to Josephus, some other book, to get historical facts on it. And we tend not to ever go there to find that. It's one of the 9 gates found in Herod's temple. All right, verse 3. Who seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, asked an alms. Now, if we're preaching the social gospel, you give them the alms. Now, the lost world, I read one guy, the lost world ought to expect something from a Christian. The lost world should expect something from a Christian. It's probably not wrong to give them, have charity. When we think of charity, clothes, food, clothing, etc. But when we had gotten saved, we went to the Mennonite church. What was that missionary doing? And where was the missionary stationed? Do you remember? I ended up giving them rabbits. If you remember, I was still doing rabbits. We gave them meat. Rabbits. I don't know if I gave them dead or alive. Did I give them dead rabbits or live rabbits? Dead rabbits? I don't even remember. Did they help butcher them? So we kind of got involved in that, but I questioned it. What you don't remember what they were doing or where they were stationed? You don't remember? They were stationed down in more like Appalachia, West Virginia. It wasn't Norma Jean. And by the way, what do Mennonites do when they don't enter the armed services? I can't think of the term right now. What's it called? Oh, VS. They joined VS. And I had a Mennonite work for me for many years. He worked for me 10 years. He was my best worker. He left, went to VS, got married, came back, worked at a golf course, then worked for me for another few years. And then he left, finally left, and went to Mennonite country out here. He lives in Lancaster, and he had my key. He was coming in my building for 10 more years after. I'd come in, and he'd be working, and I'd say, oh, hi, how are you? And, he had the key. We had a real good relationship. Anyway, after 10 years of that, I said to him, I don't know, 5, 10 years. It was years. I said, you know what, Greg? It is time to hand in your key. He said, I guess I should. So he finally gave me the key. Yeah, but he had access to everything for years. Anyway, not that Greg was doing this. I don't know what he did on BS. He was up in Corning, New York. These people were stationed in West Virginia, and they were digging, not a well, they were digging cisterns. Cisterns. Is that mission work? Yeah, that's not mission work, folks. So I was, and how I learned all this, I learned this on my own from the Almost Christian radio station. I'm listening, and then I figured out, well, missions is going out to tell people about Jesus. Now, if you give them food and tell them about Jesus, they weren't doing that. They were just digging the holes. And I remember I brought that up to the pastor, and I'll give him credit. There was they had some kind of, they didn't always preach. They had some kind of a meeting, and the missionary came in. He was the nicest guy and the nicest wife. They were very nice people. He confronted them. Do you remember that? Maybe you don't remember. It was a Sunday night. They didn't do a Sunday evening service like we do. He confronted them. He was in a nice way, to their face, in front of everybody. I was really taken back. He said, I'm going to ask them. So he asked them, well, where is the gospel in any of this? And they were from the church. They knew everybody knows everybody. He did confront them. I was just stunned. But he did confront it. The social gospel. They would give them the alms. Our missions today is mostly this: social work, medical missions, educational missions, agricultural mission, disaster relief. That's what it is. But real missions is this: that the sinner needs salvation. That's real missions. That's what missions really is all about. He that winneth, I didn't write the verse out, but it's Proverbs 11:4. He that winneth souls is wise. He that winneth souls is wise. All right, now how does the Salvation Army do this? And this will all be in the notes. Does the Salvation Army preach Jesus and salvation? I don't mean the Salvation Army today. Let's go back 100 years, 150 years. They do. Does City Mission do that? I would say yes. But what do they do first? Anybody know what the first thing they do? What's the first thing they do before they tell them about Jesus?
They take care of the body before the soul.
They give them a meal. They give them a meal, they hear the gospel, and they have a promise of a shower and a clean bed. All right? So in other words, it's not wrong to necessarily give them the alms, but we need to give them the gospel. All right? The social gospel is just giving them bodily care and avoiding the spiritual care. All right. You know what? That's Proverbs 11:30. You know, go back here to Proverbs 11:4. I don't even know what I wrote down there. Proverbs 11. So in all of your experiences with church, you know, whatever church you've been in, you know, if you grew up in Bedford, if you weren't a Roman Catholic, anybody here been in Bedford long enough, what church would you have gone to? Anybody know? There's only a couple big churches. There is a Baptist, but not big. The Methodists, you know. Methodists, Disciples of Christ. Now, what do they do? I don't know what they do. But in all of our experiences, we've heard different things. Richest profit, oh yeah, here it is. Proverbs 11, or richest profit not in the day of wrath. All right? He could get all the alms you could handle. It won't do him any good in the day of wrath. And the day of wrath is the great tribulation and ultimately hellfire. So all the alms that you can give him won't do any good. Right? If that's all you gave him, it won't help him. But righteousness delivereth from death. But salvation is what's going to deliver from eternal damnation. Right? So the way the Salvation Army handles it, the City Mission, I don't know, what's the other group? Give me another group. Is there any other group? Salvation Army? Anybody think of another one? Oh, the United Way. You know, that is a secular mess. That's a, you know what? I was really big into, it was the United Appeal when we were children. And then they changed it to what name? I think it was changed to Red Feather.
Yeah.
Was
Community chest.
What was it called, Red Feather? Or am I imagining this?
Red
Feather.
Yeah.
Then, did they call it community chest?
At one time. Well, maybe I'm thinking where I lived in Pennsylvania.
Okay, Red Feather, and then United Way. And I remember they were hitting me up for money, and I said, you're not getting it because you support abortion. And they told me, how would they get that money from me? I didn't give them money. They told me, well, your money won't go there. Your money will go here. All they're doing is what the government does. They got their bad thing going on here. They just rob this bank vault and put it in that bank vault.
There was
Yes.
a couple times where GE would be the trendsetter company.
Oh yeah, they'll come into companies and do that.
Right. And I even asked that. They gave me a card with like all 120 agencies. And they go, check a box and we'll make sure it goes to it. And I did it once, but then I started thinking, am I really sure that it's going to the Salvation Army?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I stopped that. Yeah, I did too. It's Proverbs 11:30 is the one, he that winneth souls is wise. Good news from a far country. It's like a cold drink for a thirsty soul. Is that near there? And he that wins souls is wise. Something like that. All right, now verse 7. Let's go to verse 7 here of Acts 3. And he took him by the right hand and lifted him up, and immediately his feet and ankle bones received strength. All right, so the healing of the lame man. Peter, I'll just go down this list. Peter and John gave God the glory. All right, if anybody ever go to a healing service? We went to a charismatic church once, and I wanted to see what it was like. They didn't. Did they hit people in the head? I don't think they did. And if they did ask anybody to come forward, people were coming forward to get some kind of a blessing, but there was no healing going on. They weren't running around, but it was kind of a wild service. But Peter and John gave God the glory in verses 12 and 13. It's God that gets the glory. And when Peter saw it, he answered unto the people, Ye men of Israel, why marvel ye at this? Or why look ye so earnestly on us, as though by our own power or holiness we have made this man to walk? And how do you deal with Jewish people? You go to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? The God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob, the God of our fathers, hath glorified his son Jesus. He goes right to it. Gives God the glory. Gives God the glory. When I had the opportunity to witness to the Jewish doctor that attended my wife, and he did not personally attend her when she had the big problem, but he was the staff doctor of the maternity ward. He's a young fellow. He wore the what do you call that thing? A yarmulke. He wore that. And my preacher said to me, I said, I didn't know how to respond to him. He said, well, you tell him. He said, I don't know what God you prayed to, but he heard your prayers. He said, tell him the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I never forgot that. Is if you're going to witness to a Jewish person, even if they're a secular worldly Jew and not Orthodox, you tell them that. They'll remember Grandma. In those ways. Tell them that. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, they give God the glory. Another thing. Now this is a bunch of things that would refute healing services. Peter and John healed the man right where he was. On the spot. Not at some healing meeting. Where they set up the tent and come and be healed. Now, you will have generally at these healing meetings, I only hear of it, is that you'll have a preacher go in there and come in and say, I've got cancer, I've got this heal me, to expose them and so on. And they'll say, you don't have enough faith, or they'll give some reason why they're not getting healed. The lame man did not seek the healing. He didn't come to some special meeting. He did not seek to be healed. Did not seek that. The healing was complete. No relapse. All right? Usually these people will tell me that they'll, let's say you're born with a short leg or so. Now I knew a guy where his foot ended at his knee. You had one full length and the foot was here. And from there to the floor, it was Stanley. He had polio. And they'll have him lay down on the platform and they'll say, oh, I see your leg is growing, your leg is growing. It's all hucksters. And they're just, or they can't see. They can't see or they can't hear. And it's generally things that you can't see. There's no way to see it. Anybody see the movie of, who's the guy that killed everybody in Guyana? Jim Jones. Anybody ever see that movie? You've seen that? I think they had some woman, I don't quite remember, it was in the church and she throws up something, supposedly the cancer. Hucksters. And so how do you eliminate everybody? How do you get rid of everybody in the end? You put machine guns up in the posts around the camp, and anybody running out gets shot, and the rest of them drink the Kool-Aid. That's how you got to get rid of them all. Right? The healing's complete. There's no relapse. So if you're going to get healed of poor eyesight, well, how do you tell whether or not it happened or not? No relapse. The miracle is the minor thing. he majored and they majored on the preaching. The miracle was, that's just a sideline thing. They majored from verse 12 on the preaching. And Peter and John did not require any faith, not require, but power from God. There was no faith required there. It is one of the sign gifts. Go back to Mark 16. And who requires the sign gift? Mark 16. Jews. Yeah, you were just telling me a story about a Vietnamese woman, was it? Mark 16, verses 17 and 18. These signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils. They shall speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents. Any man drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. So it's one of the sign gifts that are given there. Yes, sir.
The preacher said that while he was preaching the gospel, this Vietnamese lady was sitting in the back of the room, understood everything he said. She did not understand a word of English, but she heard the gospel as he was talking.
In Vietnamese.
She came forward and received Christ. He went through the Romans Road with her. Everything he said to her, she understood. And after she got saved, she couldn't understand him anymore. And so she had to rely on her husband now to lead her forward after that.
Well, you hear stories like that. Now, here's another story I heard, that a missionary was at one of these tongue services in the Orient someplace. It could have been Vietnam, someplace. The missionary was there, and they had a national missionary, preacher there that could, I forget where they were. Well, anyway, they started rattling something off in these in a charismatic church, and the one that spoke the foreign language said, and it wasn't the foreign language that they were speaking there. It was in another culture, and said they just glorified the devil and cursed Christ in his language.
Yeah.
I heard about that.
It's
You've
unknown
heard
gibberish.
stories like that, and I've heard that.
Yeah.
Now, I've never personally experienced anything like that, where they're doing that, and they're really cursing the... Now, I've done this tongue thing as, not a joke, but, where you just make up things, and I stopped doing that. Just the thought that, could I be cursing Christ and not know it? By doing babble. I stopped doing that. Just in case. All right, sign gifts. It gives authenticity to the message as well as the messenger. It means and shows it is real. Real. Healing has ceased. All right, like other things that have ceased. One of the ways Pastor Thompson would justify the ceasing of something like this, I think this was the illustration he gave. He said, not everything that goes on in the Bible still goes on in the Bible. It occurred, it's a real thing. The tabernacle is no longer here. The temple is no longer here. The sacrifice is over. Those things actually happened. The manna has ceased. And the manna will start up again later on. We believe during the tribulation. So the same thing is about these sign gifts, that it doesn't necessarily continue on today. That ceases too. That ceases too. And that probably will start up again as we get closer, or in this end age during the tribulation. Does God still heal today? He does. But he doesn't, it's according to his will and not through some healer. But he still heals today. And in verse 7, and he took him by the right hand lifted him up, and immediately his feet and ankle bones received strength. Salvation is immediate. Immediate. It happens immediately. All right, verses 8 through 10. The new life of the lame man. This is what immediately happens. He begins to walk. We could say in verse 7, he's on this, who knows, it said he was carried, they laid him daily at the gate, in verse 2. You assume that they put him on a cart or something they could pick up, you know, like not a gurney, like a stretcher, a litter, is that what you call that? A litter, a stretcher, to carry him. You know, who knows? It could have been his cousins. Who knows? A brother and a father carried him. Somebody carried him there. And he's laying down, he asks, and so Abraham, when you look at Abraham as a type of salvation, when the 3 angels came to visit him, 2 of them were angels and 1 was Christ, where was Abraham? What position was he? I think he's sitting in the door of the tent. He's sitting. And then from sitting, you are standing. And then from standing, you are walking. And it goes in that progression. And then if you go to Psalms chapter 1, verse 1, what is the backwards walk of a backslidden man? It goes I think it does. Psalm. And then sitting. Nor sitteth in the seat of the... go to Psalm 1. It's Psalms 1. And that's what Peter did. He was walking with Christ, and then he was standing, you know, there while the trial was going. And he's sitting there by the fire warming his hands. So that's the backwards walk. When you get saved, you sit, stand, walk. When you backslide, you're walking, standing, sitting. So blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Notice it's the backwards. You walk, stand, then sit. Right? So it goes backwards. Hey, these are all good things to learn. And as a general rule, you're only going to find that in the King James Bible, folks. They mess the words up so much and get it all so twisted around, you can't preach that stuff. It gets so messed up in other Bibles. All right. So he begins to, obviously he must be sitting in verse 7, and then he is standing in verse 7, and he begins to walk, and he leaping up stood, there he's standing in verse 8, and walked. He begins to walk. And then, and look at verse 9. And all the people saw him walking and give me a T word for praising. Walking and talking. You begin to talk about Jesus. What's the easiest way to get rid of your friends? Talk about Jesus. Tell them about Jesus, and they're not going to want to have anything to do with you. You lose all your friends. So we say, you need to get out there and witness. You need to get out there and witness. You need to get out there and witness. And who do you're supposed to witness to your family. They see you coming if they're lost, and they head the other way. And then what happens to your friends? You need to witness to your friends. Well, after 2 or 3 years of that, there's no friends left. And so the preacher's still harping on you. I'd be sitting there, well, we have no friends to talk to. You know, all the friends are gone. That all my friends already know about Jesus. They all know about Jesus. So how did Sam get to it? They hung out, he was from Massillon, and they hung out at the bar. He's an evangelist, a preacher, evangelist, and he got saved down there. And he said there was 10 or 12 of them friends that would go to the bar. So they're all hanging out at the bar. They're probably 20 years old. They're going to the bar. And when one of them is gone, what are the other 11 talking about?
About the one that is gone.
The one that's gone. So then they would all be there together, you know, the next Friday night or Saturday night. Well, this guy is gone. So what are they talking about then? That guy that's gone. So Sam, he figured out, he said, oh, I finally figured out, the day that I'm gone, they're talking about me. Right? Is that, by the way, is that sin? That is sin, folks. And Christians ought not do that. They ought not do that, be talking about each other.
We're only saying good things about you.
You know, only if it's good things, not bad things. But anyway, he said he finally lost all his friends. He went to the bar and told them all about Jesus. That was it, man. It was over. All right, so he begins to walk. He begins to talk. Instead of being self-centered, give me alms. He is now praising God. Standing is salvation. The walking is the Christian walk. And look at verse number 8. And entered with them into the temple. Boy, you can, if we're gonna typify this, well, there's the rapture and entering into heaven, amen. Right, getting into the temple there. All right, and we're going to stop there. We'll look at some of those verses next week. We're about 10 minutes till. We'll preach in about 15 here. Father, bless now. Preaching to follow. In Christ's name, amen.